It's this one. There we go. Okay.
No, you know, it's not, we don't, our conversation's not going really rock, really morning. It was starting with groups that are easily pulled together and have a lot of advancement. Hotels have a lot of opportunities, but they're expensive and long lead time opportunities, more so than like the breweries and the restaurants who have a lot of lighting opportunities. And so if we start organizing like real rock business versus
So who are the churches?
it was churches, nonprofits, restaurants, and breweries. That was the short list.
Chairs later.
Because we work together. You all already have a lot.
I mean,
It's just, if we're gonna start running and implementing, we've gotten a lot of trouble early in the process of trying to run and implement and working with coordinator. So we already, after that meeting,
Like that, right?
always, right?
so that's your full end. That is a big that,
Who's doing these others?
well, we asked Nate, remember the action items today, was Nate was coordinated with
I was,
Nate Lewis.
it's you, construction side.
Yeah, basically,
Nate and
it's
Jeremiah.
almost like Ron's my
Nate
client
and Jeremiah.
internal,
Right.
and then there's other people that sort of the same role. I look at the buildings, episode sections too. Like
Yeah,
ramp.
the idea was we were gonna pull working group together. That's
I know, I've got a lot of the rentals trying to sell, and my realtor's like, they're opening new things.
meetings to assemble their people, come up with their plan on how
I
they're.
shot Jack to come buy it back.
That is in your contract.
I know.
I don't think we.
Not that I've ever done it.
Yeah, I think we did during the boom years.
Oh, he gets it now.
Then we don't allow.
Build houses too, so we have. We only do.
Yeah, Jeremiah,
Here,
like,
floor and the cabinets, they
Floor
ran
plans,
it,
yeah.
but the floor plans, we change. It's very popular.
So they're gonna be, and they'll start.
It's a lot of these baby boomers that live in Chicago, whenever they can sign a contract, could only put down 20%. Instead of having to hire a GC, negotiate, have draws and all that management. So a lot of them find that really appealing.
Hey, Rob, get over here.
Oh, well.
I think we got Jack's relatives.
and if they
Fixed
were, I
up
was,
in Cashers.
somebody said there was.
Did you know anything about that?
I know about it because they didn't have any power in Black. Gate man for us.
Oh, really?
I think it was about 6 hours, but the hot water heater went out before then. And so we were trying to. It can always be worse. Water heater, so we didn't know if it was fixed or not because we didn't have power.
Yeah, our power was out. That's a long way. For almost 3 days. And, we have a generator. But it doesn't connect to all the way. It's amazing.
Good morning.
And so, on
Hey, Darby, if you want to, I think I saw you there.
Did you?
I was dropping my son
And
off.
I was on the phone.
Probably picking him up. You were picking him up.
Yeah, yeah, she does.
6:30.
Oh, cool, yeah, we've got the 6 o'clock end time.
Yeah, we got this start time.
Playing since she was like 4.
Yeah, he's been doing it.
She really loves it, and it's great for her, and, you know, she wanted to do or the other one. Yeah, the travel one.
Mine's like that. Nobody ever said anything. You can find the right way.
And I let her like try out. We're good. Your friends, like, players, challenge team. Yeah, long time.
That's what I was talking about, selected team.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. There's no way. It's like
4:30.
yeah.
What's the child? And me.
Yeah, I don't really,
Yeah.
you know, and who knows what.
Unless you stop doing all these other things, I think you should be working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was one of the things. And then they have people in front of you.
Yeah. I called to talk to them about it. Just trying to get a little more information, trying to feel it out. She was like, well, she can play challenge, but she'll be behind. She gets to middle school and high school. She's 10 years old.
I don't see you getting a scholarship in
We're
college.
not getting a scholarship. We're like, we just want to like instill healthy, fun, active, like, exercise. The sport is fun. That's like what we're going for here. So, well, you know, the niece and all the way, like she got so good. They call them sacrifices that they had to do, you know, because instead of like,
Sure.
you know, they were always on the road. They ruled their life, and she was, and you know what happened? She got to a junior year in high school when they started recruiting for college and all that. It's not, they didn't even meet her situation compared to like most of us would be thrilled for a kid, you know, they just are in a, you know, he's just been really successful career-wise and he made it, but she got to a junior year when I was scout over there and she worked it out. And then she was pretty much out after going to like Nashville and stuff. And it's like, it kind of like just, I think on one hand was really great for her, the discipline and the learning, you know, but on the other hand, it's like just ruled her life. It's like the whole thing of her life, you know?
And
Yeah, Lesson's good. Well, I think that.
Yeah.
Somebody asked you about it.
I hate to say it, but it's not like he practices at home. So it's like practice is good. Good morning.
What's up, buddy? Jesus,
Yeah, I got some things to talk to you about.
How you doing? I have kids get out of school at noon today.
I've got a couple of things. One conference.
Running out of this one. It's only you know, where they've
And all the Tredsman, you know, talked to me like, yeah, I was out here and Antioch was talking about somebody that gets
You know, as opposed to
We have a little, like, epicenter.
So, in the studies,
if somebody happens to consult on this,
and in fact, you know, the reality is, you know,
Climate change. You got to turn for and what's happening is all battles are being waged at the regulatory, We are, because I'm on that.
So you're working with the city on that? So has that gone in?
October after. For the first. Eric. A few others. I'll talk to you.
Safe, sit down. Hush. Stop speaking amongst yourselves. Thanks, thanks everyone for being here this morning for the Energy Innovation Task Force meeting. So what I'd like to do is just kind of briefly review our agenda for today. See if anybody has any questions about the agenda. So what we're hoping to do at our meeting today, we'll do introductions in just a minute. I'm going to ask if anybody has any comments on the minutes of the meeting, which were circulated over email. And if nobody has any questions, then we're gonna accept the minutes. We've got time for announcements from any of the partner organizations involved in EITF. And then the main things that are kind of the heart of the meeting today. So last Friday, no, what was the day? Thursday, right? Last Thursday, of course, we had the meeting with a lot of the folks from Duke Energy who came from all over the country, different parts of the Duke Energy world, Charlotte, Raleigh, other states as well, to meet with some of the members of the EITF to talk about our goals and how we can work together to pursue them. So it was a really positive meeting. We were in this room from 8 in the morning until like 4:30 that afternoon, and people worked really hard, and I think some really good things have come out of it. And so we're going to have kind of some reporting out about some of the highlights of that collaboration meeting. And Robert will kind of tee us off on that, and then different folks who were representing EITF in that meeting will share some of their thoughts about the highlights. Following that, we're going to have a report on the public input and public branding process. And then I think following that, we're actually hoping that I think we're going to ask the EITF to actually vote to affirm, some of the specific recommendations and direction that the campaign branding process is headed. And then following that, we want to spend a few minutes just talking about the campaign and next steps, things that we believe we're ready to start working on near term. And following that, as we do at each meeting, we'll have an opportunity for public comment. So that is what we are hoping to accomplish today. Are there any questions about the agenda? All right, well, if not, then let's just, as we do, just quick introductions for the task force folks, and we also love to hear who everyone else is with us. So I'm Bradley Newman, and I'm from the County Commission.
Julie Mayfield, City Council.
Jane Hatley, Self-Help Credit Union.
Dave Hollister, Sundance Power Systems and the Alliance for Energy Democracy.
Kelly Martin, Sierra Club.
Himanshu Kurve with the Buncombe County TDA.
Jake Thomas, and a bit more farms.
Sonia Marcus with the City of Asheville Sustainability Commission.
Sarah Fraser, New Belgium.
Zach Doyle, Technology Working Group.
Robert Sykes, Duke Energy and Technology Working Group.
Corey Atkins, Asheville Chamber.
Jay Hackett, Green Opportunity.
Brad Rouse, Peak Working Group and Energy Service Network.
Tamara Keystes, Greenbelt Alliance.
Jason Walls, Duke Energy.
And why don't we start over here?
Kenny County, Shelton Group. Sarah Marshall, Shelton Group.
Bruce Fury, Citizen. Jim Barnes, Citizen Actors.
Peter Jackson, Buncombe, and Asheville Citizen, City of Asheville employee.
Bridget Herring, City of Asheville Office of Sustainability.
Jeremiah Roy, Buncombe County Office of Sustainability.
Jeff Chang, University of Friar, WSP.
Shannon Lally, Greenbelt Alliance. Terry Marcus, Greenbelt Alliance.
Phil Pritchard, Defenders of Wildlife.
Tim Berthasell, White Star Solar.
Lauren Sexton, City of Asheville.
Rick Clemenzi, Geothermal Design Center.
Judy Siglin, Net Zero Foundation.
Melissa Malkin Weber, Self-Help Credit Union.
John Creighton, Buncombe County.
Mike Losmer, Asheville resident.
Mobile Family Lewis, Sierra Club.
G. Williams, Southside Economic Revitalization Green Infrastructure Training Project.
Jerry Rice, cameraman. Well, accountability.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Wanted to ask if anybody had any comments on the minutes that were circulated for the meeting. If not, we'll consider those the record of what we did. All right, very good. So Announcements. Anybody got any announcements? Why don't you start?
I am gonna look to maybe Gary and Bridget for this. We just talked about this before. There, I guess about a month or maybe 6 weeks ago, the Bloomberg Foundation announced a big grant opportunity for local governments to the tune of $5 million if you're selected for that. And I believe the city is submitted a letter of interest or is in that process. So that could be a huge measure of support. What's the timing?
Can I ask you a question? It's a 6-week turnaround. We're working on a plan to do dashboard tracking of the data.
There's a $5 million request out? The city's asking $5 million?
So I haven't been involved in that. That's,
It's a pool.
Can I?
It's a large pool competitive process. I don't want to give the impression that we got $5 million coming from energy innovation. It's a Bloomberg technology and problem solver pool of funds that are available in a competitive grant process.
do you want to add?
We've thrown our hat in the ring.
Yeah, exactly. It's a grant. That's what grants are.
There's 500 cities that have applied so far, and then they'll select 30 of those to get $100,000 to test out your solution. Then you have to apply next year for the actual grant, and then those 30 will apply, and then one will get $5 million, and 4 will get $1 million each.
And maybe just while we're on the grants topic, so Jeremiah, you want to, the Candida grant's been submitted, right? But it's also turned out to be highly competitive as well. So if you just share a couple of, how many folks, how many cities, counties submitted?
Approximately 42 other local governments were submitting applications.
Okay.
And there's anywhere from 5 to 7 that will get actual.
Okay. So
yeah, it's a competitive.
Yeah, so only about 10% are going to get selected, but
we put our best
we're feeling a strong, it's a really strong approach. So thanks for.
And just as a reminder, that's for a low-income weatherization program that the county would run, and the city would have a role in that, as well as other partners like community action opportunities.
All right. Jason, you have other Duke announcements?
Yeah, I'll start, and I think Jason has one as well. I guess first of all, earlier this week we had an event that reminds all of us how important electric services to us when we had the remnants of Irma come through. I'm happy to report that Western North Carolina should be fully restored by the end of the day. And it has been, by our standards, a pretty successful restoration. It's been safe. We've had nobody injured in the course of that restoration, either with the team doing the restoration work or any members of the public. And we just want to thank everybody in the community for your patience and support. We've heard a lot of stories from our line technicians about the great attitudes that the people they have encountered have had. And I know when you're out of power for multiple days, it's kind of hard to stay positive about that, but we've had a lot of good support from our community. So to any of you all who were impacted, thank you very much for your patience. And in general, I want to thank the community for your support. The next thing I wanted to announce, we have talked on a few different occasions in this room about utility scale storage projects and the fact that we have been working to develop use cases for those. We are today announcing to this group 2 projects. The first project is in Hot Springs. For those of you who don't know, Hot Springs is a small town located to the northwest of Asheville. There's one line that serves Hot Springs, and it goes through some very rugged terrain. When that line goes out, the town is out, and the town stays out until the line is repaired. And often those repairs can take over a day due to the remoteness of that line. So one of the projects that we're going to be doing, pending approval, is a 4 megawatt battery project coupled with solar. That project is sort of like a much larger scale version of the Mount Sterling project that we talked about last year. It will give us the capability to operate the town of Hot Springs as an island. So it is a microgrid. Depending on how much load is used, it can provide several hours of backup capacity for the town. And coupled with the solar, it could extend it even further if you've got good conditions for generating solar power when you're in that situation. So that's 4 megawatts. The second project is at what we call our Rock Hill Substation, which is right off Sweeten Creek Road, probably about 2 miles south of the intersection with I-40. This is a 9 megawatt project, and here again, it does give us some reliability improvements, but we also have some critical industrial loads in that area. And so that battery will also help with power quality and reducing the number of voltage depressions and so forth that those customers see.
And so where did you say that one is?
That's at Rock Hill, where Rock Hill Road intersects with Sweeten Creek. It's just back there where we have a existing substation site with additional property where we can locate the battery. So, so that's a total of 14 megawatts. If you recall, in our original commitment, we said we would install a minimum of 5 megawatts. So we have exceeded that commitment. And we are still pursuing some other potential projects. Both of these projects have favorable business cases associated with them. So we believe they're very solid in terms of the justification. But they still, storage is a new animal when it comes to a lot of us, including our regulators. And so to some degree, everybody's scratching their heads to figure out the right way to treat that as a regulated asset. So we're working through all of that with the public staff and the Utilities Commission. I'm very optimistic that will go very well. And so we will probably begin construction in 2018, hopefully completing it in 2018. This represents about a $30 million investment. If you look at both projects together, it's about a $30 million investment. We're going to be issuing a press release next week, probably Thursday. And one of the things we're going to be doing in that press release is tying the deployment of these storage projects closely to the work of this committee, and in particular the work of the Technology Committee. Very early, just a matter of probably a month or two after the formation of the Technology Committee, we had some representatives of our storage team come in to talk to the Technology Committee, get their perspectives on how they viewed storage, how they viewed storage as being a resource to be used as part of the solution of what we're about here. And so I would tell you the Technology Committee has been involved just about from the very beginning of this work. So we want to make sure that that's clear to the community, that's been the case. So we're really excited about that. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah. So one of the things that has come out is the new IRP, September 1st, which for those who haven't seen it, includes a 4-year delay in the peaker plan. And so, okay, well, this is public information. The question is, was this battery installed in, or was there any storage in the assessment of the needs in the IRP? So this is over and above.
This is over and above what was considered in that in this IRP.
And I think it's, and can I go to my, so,
Absolutely.
and so in terms of the IRP, I think it's important to kind of reiterate with the group the role of the IRP. IRP isn't a chiseled in stone document. It's a very dynamic plan that is updated on an annual basis. And so, one of the fears that I always have about the good work we're doing here is that if we delay it, people start to lose a sense of urgency. Well, so there is certainly some of the commitments and work and the awareness that we have built as part of this effort, but also updated load forecasts and milder winter last year and some other things that contributed to pushing that to now the planning horizon, seeing that 4 years further out in the future. And so I would say now's a great opportunity. It buys us a little bit of margin to continue to do more work here to ensure that continues to move out. Depending on how Asheville grows and what we see in our community over the next year, 2 years, they could always come back closer.
That's right.
And so it's one of those dynamic planning tools that is used to guide when resources are needed, but it just really highlights the importance of this work, the work of this group, to continue to kind of keep the pedal on the metal to help keep that.
Quick question. Let's do questions here first, and then we'll take a couple quick questions from others as well. Dave, go ahead.
Okay. Are those battery projects going to be open bid to private companies so that to manage them and to operate them? So it'll be a totally open bidding process to companies?
Yes.
Awesome. The other thing, I don't know if folks have heard, but Governor Cooper today has announced that he's delaying the permitting process for the Atlantic Coastal Pipeline, which is a really great thing. And based on water quality assessments along the whole route, so it's a pretty significant announcement.
Okay, so can the Peak Data Group submit a request for the regional backup new projections for the peaker from Duke's load forecasting and IRP department? Because that wasn't published, and we had that, or did they run a new Western balancing equation?
So it's important. So in the IRP process, Brad, we only file a true all-in IRP every 2 years.
Right.
And so there was an updated IRP, but not all the data was run. They ran Western Carolina data specifically, but I don't know that they produced a sheet in which we're going to be able to talk through like we did last year.
Right.
But they would for the full update in 2018.
Right.
So I don't know. We'll have to ask.
Well, we can request it.
We can
if
request
it's available.
but I also want to just temper the group that this was based on the updated data from the updated load forecast, but it's not a full IRP year, and so it was reflective of the work, but not necessarily full IRP.
So kind of related question. So, Robert, has Duke forecasted with the battery projects that you're describing today, and the solar storage in Hot Springs, and then the standalone battery project in South Asheville, those move ahead? How much additional time, or how much kind of peak offset, do those projects achieve? And we talk about the 17 megawatts a year, kind of a gap out in the future. So, could you comment on that?
Yeah, well, it's not totally clear yet. It depends on, what exactly is put in and the characteristics of those particular projects. But the going in assumption we've been using is for every 17 megawatts of storage we put in, it's a year of deferred capacity, or it's a year to defer the need for the.
So it really is kind of, I mean, it is not, I mean, it's probably overly simplistic to say it's megawatt per megawatt, but there is some,
Yeah, it's,
you know,
there's a correlation for
yeah.
sure. And, you know, the ultimate objective is, I mean, that is one of the primary cost benefits of putting in storage. So, you know, it's not, if it's not a one-for-one, it's pretty close.
Yeah. All right. George, you have a question?
Following up on Brownie's and Dave's comment about storage, you mentioned that storage is a new animal and it changes the regulatory. Can you just comment briefly on that without getting into the weeds on that?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. You know, if you think about a traditional generating resource, it's a very simple thing to look at because it serves one purpose. But when you look at storage, there's more value than just capacity, right? For example, you know, I mentioned the reliability improvement for hot springs. That has value. And so how is that value accounted for from a regulatory perspective? That's really never been done, at least not here. And so there has to be some work done to give that the appropriate amount of value so we make the right decisions. Is that?
That's good.
Yeah, and there are other
But
benefits.
because it's this whole uncharted area about how do you count this vis-a-vis the way it's traditionally been regulated.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know it goes to state to do all the time.
Well, and I will tell you, we've had initial conversations with public staff, and they have been very positive. I mean, they understand and recognize this is the way of the future, and we need to get to the point where we're looking at this.
And where you know what is, how it's counted.
Right.
Well, that's very exciting. I've got just a couple of quick announcements.
I just was going to follow up on that. If you want to learn more about the value stacking of different distributed energy resources and that, like what's behind that, you can research New York REV. It's a model that's being developed up in New York that I think is going to set the standard for a lot of the industry as we move forward.
Excuse me, New York, what?
REV.
Thank you.
REV?
Yeah, REV.
All right. So just a couple quick announcements. The county did, people probably read about the paper, the county did make a selection on the solar farm project on the retired landfill. After careful consideration, we did decide to partner with this company, Duke Energy, you've probably heard of. There were two other companies that put proposals in. This company out of Georgia called Hannah Solar, and another company, a national company called Amoresco. They both put forward, you know, pretty solid proposals, but we did, in totality, I feel like the proposal from Duke was the strongest. So that's moving ahead, and we're excited about it. Looking forward to taking next steps on that planning process.
Question on
yes, sir.
Was that the regulated part of the business or the unregulated part of the business?
That's the regulated.
Regulated?
Yeah. The other thing I want to announce is that the County Commission is on our second meeting in October 17th. We are planning on taking up consideration of the 100% renewable policy that we discussed as a commission earlier this year. And so anyway, I just wanted to announce that that's scheduled for that meeting. So any folks who have interest in that policy, we'd welcome input on that between now and then. The County Commission meeting of October 17th is when that is scheduled. So there'll be some additional materials and documents put together around that. So just, anyway, just wanted to announce that's when it's scheduled for coming back to for further consideration. All right, if there's no other announcements,
I have an announcement.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll just play Ed Katz here and wear my UNCA hat because he's not here today. But UNC Asheville applied for a competitive program in the spring that's offered by our National Organization for Campus Sustainability Work. It's called ASHE. We were one of 6 schools that was selected for a program that provides on-site support for large-scale solar projects. So those are being developed, that project is being developed actively now with weekly meetings about it, and could include storage. And The project, just to give you a sense of scale, it can't be any bigger than a megawatt because that's what Duke restricts us to in terms of how much solar capacity we can have on campus. So we have more capacity, it's just that we can't go over that limit. So that's what we're working with. And that was the minimum threshold, in fact, to be able to apply for this program. And we heard from our partners last week, although I don't have details about this, that there was some regulatory change from Duke that has been announced in regards to a subsidy for rooftop solar installations specifically targeted at the UNC system campuses. And apparently the details on that are going to be released in January, and so we're hoping to be right out of the gate when that becomes effective.
That's great.
All right, real quick, we got to move on.
Just to follow up on what you've mentioned, Robert, about the battery storage, yes, there's grid stabilization, and yes, there's peak impact and so forth, but getting the ball rolling on the storage is also crucial for increasing the solar, the clean energy input farther down the road. So just, we get two different goals in all of this, but it's an excellent start, and we should keep that in mind. This facilitates getting a lot more clean energy into the system and offsetting the natural gas, in addition to the peaker and other services that are out there. So just throwing that out.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. So let's have a discussion about the collaboration meeting last week. And Robert, you're gonna
I'll start out, and I know I will be receiving a lot of support from several of my counterparts who were there as well. But last Thursday, as Brownie mentioned, we had a meeting between several representatives of this group and Duke representatives primarily from our programs organizations, both our traditional programs as well as our new and emergent programs. And so just to give you an example of what I mean by that, traditional programs would be like EnergyWise and those kind of programs that we've offered for several years. The emergent or new programs would be things like we've mentioned here before, perhaps a residential scale solar incentive program that we formed a team to evaluate. So both representatives from both of those areas were at this meeting. I share Brownie's assessment of the results of the meeting. I think it was very successful. One of the key objectives of that meeting, we knew we weren't going to be able to solve or address all of our issues in one day. So our highest priority was to set a good foundation to accomplish that over the future days and weeks and months that we worked together. I think we did accomplish that objective, both in terms of getting the table set with the technical elements that need to be in front of us as we begin our work to determine what's going to provide or give us the greatest chance to succeed, but also in terms of establishing good, positive, constructive relationships between this group as well as those of you here in this room. When I was making my introductory comments to the group, I kind of compared the feeling I was having to the feeling you get when you have a group of old friends and you've met some new friends who you think are really going to like your old friends and you can't wait to introduce them. But it's always with some anxiety because you're not sure, right? And by the end of the meeting, in fact, in my closing comments, I shared that I was very happy and somewhat relieved that my old friends and my new friends liked each other a lot. So everybody really came to the table with the right attitude. It wasn't about finding reasons not to do things. It was about figuring out how we could do things.
Robert, just on that point, can we see a show of hands around this table who was at that meeting or in the room? Who was there? Okay, great.
So the first part of the meeting, I guess the easiest way to describe it is level setting. We level set in terms of the issues and the opportunities we have here. Basically, a very high-level view of the analysis work that RMI has performed. We quickly moved off of that and did some level setting between the work that the community group has done in terms of identifying programs or best practices or concepts that they would like to pursue, and looking at portfolio of existing Duke programs, and also kind of woven in with the discussion of the Duke program was sharing of some other program ideas or new program offerings that are in the works that are at various stages of potentially getting approved. And so once that was out there and everybody felt like they had a good understanding of where one another were, we broke up into groups. There were 2 group sessions that comprised this meeting. The first group session was focused on what can we do quickly? Where's the low-hanging fruit? Where are the things that we can pursue quickly so that we can begin to get some momentum and build up some steam related to this part of our work. The second breakout group was more focused on the longer term, more, I would say, more strategic. You know, how do we need to be looking at this from a big picture perspective? So back to the quick hit items, I should have also mentioned that kind of an overlay to this short-term view of things was what can we incorporate into the campaign that we are planning to launch later this year. Because that's kind of the litmus test. If it can be ready to share and promote as part of that campaign, then that fits the description of a short-term initiative. Some of the things that came out of that discussion, and here's where I will lean on my counterparts because I was only in one of the breakout groups. But some of the no-brainer type, no regrets kind of things that we can pursue. Energy Wise Home is clearly one that is ready. The program manager for Energy Wise Home was there at the meeting. He shared that he has received the feedback from this group about concerns about the quality of the customer experience associated with that. He has been working to take steps to ensure that we can adequately resource that work, depending on how much success we have with promoting it. So he is very confident that he has got those issues addressed, and if we use Energy Wise Home as a component of our fall campaign, he's confident that he can meet that challenge. Another program that actually got, I think, some very surprised reaction from a lot of the folks in the room was our commercial energy efficiency program. The program manager of that program was there as well, and he walked folks through. And what he shared was that, that this program, if a small commercial customer, small business owner, decides that they want to take steps to improve the energy efficiency of their business, Duke Energy will subsidize that work up to 85% of the total cost. 85%. That's a lot. So
There's no top limit on it?
no
matter
I
what
don't
the
know that
cost?
there is a top limit. It's,
You
it's all tied.
You can only use it 5 times. There's some things you can only do up to 5 times a year.
Yeah.
But they would pay up to 85.
Up to, the word up to
is really.
But, and so, you know, there were many cynics in the room, like, okay, you said up to 85%, you know, what does that mean? That their average is really 10 and it's up to 85? But no, it's not, that is not the case. The average is 60%. And did I say 85? It's 80.
It's 80, yeah.
Why do I keep saying 85?
You want
Because I'm an eternal optimist, right? Yes.
What sector is this for?
Small commercial.
Small commercial.
This is over 90% of the commercial.
When did this come down? When did this
It's been
happen?
around for a long time.
Well, because when we tried to do this, it didn't work out that way.
Okay.
The program has matured, Dave. I mean, it really has. If you haven't tried in the last year, I would go back.
Well, it's already done now, so we did it anyway, you know.
Well, there you go.
What? It's on page 18 of the clicks.
Small commercial.
Hang on, we got 280.
Kilowatts and below.
Say again?
180 kilowatts and below.
So what, for me, I have no idea what that means.
Walmart. Think of
Walmart's not a small commercial.
or not like a building, what, or a grocery store?
No.
So what-
Gas station.
Gas station.
Restaurant. Restaurant. Some of the smaller breweries.
Yes.
Okay, sure.
And there is also a program for larger commercial customers too, which has a lot of similarities, but there was more, as Robert's saying, kind of some focused discussion around this small commercial customer.
Yeah, and you know, this is where over 90% of the commercial customers are small, considered small commercial. And so the thought was that would be very well suited for the campaign, because really that's what the campaign is intended for, is to address.
So where can we get information on this?
Well, there is a webpage, but we will get you, I tell you what, we'll get you some, we can post some program documentation if you'd like.
And can you backdate the check by any chance?
I'll look into it. Yeah.
Right, where you made the mistake is saying that you already did it, and then you're like, I'm seriously considering doing this, you know, like. Maybe later today.
To the point of Dave's question, that was a common issue that we talked a lot about, because we want to make sure that whatever we promote, folks will have a positive experience with it. And so if we promote this thing and people don't have a positive experience, that will not be good.
Is it the Small Business Energy Saver Program? Is that what it's
Yeah, I think
called?
that's the
Okay,
name of it.
that's all you have to Google to get the program
Yeah.
information.
And so there was some conversation about trying to maybe break things down a little bit so that there's not this big mad rush initially that overwhelms our capability to successfully deliver. We really didn't come to any conclusions about that. But I think one of the most common options that seemed to have some support was perhaps approaching it in a segmented way by community, right, of greater Asheville, Buncombe County footprint. So that's going to need some work to really nail that down. But I would say those two programs kind of emerged as the top ones that might be included in the campaign. Now, another segment of focus that I think got a lot of attention and support is low income, and you know, maybe good. Brad, do you want to share what we talked about with low income?
Yeah, I thought we had a really.
Can I do something real quick though, because there was just a lot of time spent on the small medium business. Can we talk a little bit about the next and immediate steps associated with that came out of it before we go on to the effort working group? So in terms of kind of next steps and how it all weaves into the EITF, so Jeremiah and Nate Lewis, who is our program manager, who had about 9 hours notice to join us that day, because his boss couldn't make it at the last minute because of Hurricane Irma travel. Jeremiah and Nate, and kind of the commitment coming out of that is we're going to assemble a small group of Jeremiah's, Amber's of the world, myself, Nate, and others to come up with who are those target industries, specifically the ones we talked about that day, for restaurants, breweries, churches, or religious organizations, the nonprofits, and
Right, it's nonprofit, even though they're not for-profit businesses, there are types of facilities they work in, the size of many of them can fall into this.
yeah. And so the idea is Nate and Jeremiah have actually already met and started talking about this. And tapping Corey is going to play a really key role in this and doesn't know it yet, about helping to leverage our relationships with some of the small businesses that are also chamber members, and Himanshu with some of the hoteliers, to really try to target some of these small business organizations who are already well organized, so that we can bring people in kind of a forum type of atmosphere to allow that conversation to happen at a larger scale, and try to do some of these projects at multiple locations with individual conversations. So I don't know if Jeremiah has any update, but I know that he and Nate have already connected, with the idea being is we're going to be putting together a very targeted plan for this kind of small and medium business outreach, because it is a critical kind of player in a lot of what we're trying to do, and it had a lot of momentum leaving the meeting last week.
Yeah, and I would just echo that, yeah, that's exactly the plan. Nate and I have already started some initial discussions on, how we can leverage some of the existing resources to just further the work that we're already doing with the county, whether that's through technical assistance for energy audits. One of the things that I think is key to mention is that small business energy saver and that 80% is almost exclusively for lighting at this point, which is why it sounds huge. It doesn't really include like a whole building aspect to it, so just want to sort of clarify that. But that said, the whole point is to have this sort of coordinated effort to engage the local community, the nonprofits, the faith-based organizations, and we're already well on our way to having those discussions and moving in that direction.
That's great. That's great. So we really want to move this ahead and, kind of start getting some things on the calendar for some of these different segments that are kind of high priority. So we envision these as kind of like peer-to-peer kind of social events for people in different parts of the business community, different sectors, where folks can come in and learn about the program, maybe from some of the businesses that have already done it and had success, kind of hear testimonials about like, hey, I did this in my business, we're saving all this money, Duke's got great incentives for it. So we're going to start getting these things on the calendar for later this year, looking into the early part of next year. And so, there's going to be opportunities for a lot of folks here to participate in that.
Just to speak to one other aspect of that, kind of the point that Kelly and Dave were making about the difficulty of not knowing that was out there and different things. One of the things, we've relied heavily on almost door-to-door kind of knocking on doors and trying to sell the product. And that hasn't been overly successful because, let's face it, small and medium business folks are really busy people. And so the idea here is to bring groups together around a very common type of program or common type of social setting, so you can talk to people of like-minded or who are in the same type of business and share stories and find out how we can customize things that reach and can reach the majority of those businesses. So instead of going door to door, it's about helping to sell to a group so people can learn.
I was just wondering, it sounds like a great meeting. I was wondering if there's notes that can be circulated or take away action items, or somehow the rest of the EITF can be informed about this. I appreciate the update right now, but I would love to be able to actually look at a written list and digest the information that came out of it.
Yeah, there was a list of action items that was captured. That has been getting confirmed with all the people who made commitments, and I think we pretty much got that. I haven't seen anyone that's balked. And then RMI is preparing a report to kind of report out on, how the meeting went. So both of those documents should be available.
And the session materials are already posted on the EITF website. Did we send those out, Lauren, or?
Not for the August meeting.
Well, no, the session materials for this meeting last Thursday.
I didn't receive those.
Oh, that's what I thought I said.
Well, that was really good.
Yeah.
That is finally everything.
I'll send it to you again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll circulate it and we'll get.
Awesome, thanks.
Brad, is this like after a year and a half whatever, how long we've been working on this, the official launch.
It feels that way.
Should we be doing more than just meeting? Should be like official.
Launch it. Well, maybe that's the transition.
I know, but
You're right.
I think we should be more
We need to
excited than
celebrate.
we are showing right now.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Do it.
I actually have something
Happy
to do.
dance.
Finally. I know, I think that's right. I mean, I think there was, you know, there's kind of this arena where there's so many, you know, there's so many different things that could be done. It's kind of part of it is just choosing which of them makes sense for us to move on right now. And I think as Robert said, the small business piece, I mean, we've got some bigger employers here too, but largely Asheville, Buncombe is an economy made up primarily by small businesses, and I think people take a lot of pride in that. So I think it's a big enough sector we can make a real impact, but it's also consistent with kind of the community values around small business. It can help small businesses save money, be more competitive, you know, grow that sector. So there's a lot of different reasons that one, I think, generated the excitement in the meeting, and we're glad to hear that. We hope it would generate excitement.
And to hear the program manager say, and I want to make it even better. And I would really like your feedback on how we can do that.
Yeah, I have a question about kind of attacking these lighting projects separately from other kinds of energy efficiency improvements. I know that in the context of, say, a larger institution like a university, sometimes when we peel off those really quick payback projects, we actually lose opportunities to bundle energy projects in a way that might actually bring in more capital for the kinds of improvements that are harder to finance. And so it's just a suggestion I'm making to you about this program. If we're looking to expand it or improve it, perhaps it would be better to look holistically at, you know, an energy audit rather than just, you know, throw the money at the lighting, because then you actually lose an opportunity to leverage more capital.
Yeah.
Is that the capital sign, Bridget?
Yeah. We agree, that's what it is. We agree.
I was just gonna say, so there was a lot of conversation really between Nate and Jeremiah about audits and assessments and when, what is appropriate, where, and how. And so I think that conversation was pretty fruitful to say, when we're going in there, we don't just need to tell you a lighting plan. Lighting plan is generally the quickest payback, so it's the one that people tend to do because it makes the most sense. But there needs to be all those options kind of bundled and packaged together so that you can say, hey, but if you do this, it can have this type of impact. And so that's a lot of the conversation as well.
I like the idea of the social settings of engaging these groups. I'm just going to throw out the idea of maybe making use of STEAM groups, like I don't know about UNCA, but like Little Ryan's a sustainability program where students might be able to reach out. And I'm thinking in the context of like breweries. For example, national organization, Brewers Association has a sustainability subcommittee, and they've created an internship, realizing that a lot of these smaller breweries, they're so focused on making beer and they're so busy, they don't have the time to like think about energy efficiency and conserving water and some of these things. So Brewers Alliance at a national scale has created a sustainability internship where these interns, not paid, are working one-on-one with small breweries to help them. And it's mostly that's focused on some benchmarking. But I wonder if maybe there's a way we can create some kind of internship, it's not to be paid, but it could give students a great experience, some real world experience, but also actually drive this to completion.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, because we're going to need to try to figure out how to, you know, I mean, appreciate Jeremiah being willing to work with Nate. I mean, people being willing to step up and work on this stuff, but we need to kind of flesh out a plan, kind of how does this plan work? And it's like, it's going to be a lot of logistics and work, so if we can figure out some strategies like that to kind of bring some more people in to help do this kind of organizing, facilitation, stuff like that, that would be awesome. So appreciate the suggestion.
And Corey, are you guys thinking about making this something that would kind of be offered or promoted through the workplace challenge to the entities and organizations that participate in that?
It may be. Bridget and Amber and I are meeting on Monday to go a little bit more into that in the Better Buildings Challenge. We might end up sort of swallowing the workplace challenge at the end of the day, depending on what happens. But I see this, at least the Small Business Energy Saver program, be a good thing to bring up at the next Buncombe Business Organizations meeting. I don't know if you are familiar with that. Basically, we convene a meeting quarterly sort of semi-annually, with West Asheville Business Association, Weaverville, the Downtown Association, Liberal Arts District Businesses, and
Black Mountain.
Inca Candler Business Association, Black Mountain, and we talked, so the last topic was parking. And so we talked about how we could help private lot owners could help with parking stress, in those areas. Biltmore Village is another one. And so my thought was, and what I've written down here after hearing that, was to make this part of the agenda item for that, to have each one of those, because they're more, they can delve more into the specifics of their own region and have closer connections with those particular communities and have them push it out individually too, possibly.
Dave, and then we'll move on to the residential low income.
So the small business seems to be getting a lot of attention, and we did a brief mention of low income and sort of the residential programs, but is that a sense of what the priority is right now, or is that, is there some?
Not really, I don't think so.
Because we found, at least this group's found that the residential transition into, electric heating and cooling is the biggest hit on the peaking, so.
That's right. No, I mean, I think there was equally, perhaps even more energy around low income and residential, but you can see how things just kind of take off when you start to put things together. So what we just talked about is really as a result of the energy.
Right, is it, maybe it's this 85% number that
or
is
the
very
80%.
attractive, 80% number that's really attractive, which is sort of the reason for, looking at other programs we can bring into the residential.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we shift gears on that and talk about that for just a second, because I think there definitely are opportunities, but there were, there's some challenges to that. I think there were good, honest discussions about it. So let's kind of shift to that for a second, and it's going to be minutes on.
Well, I thought that the overall meeting was fantastic. The people were very, very engaged and very interested in working with us, and that it was all very positive. And I'm sort of, when they go back and look at the commitments, and if they say yeah, then that's more of a cause for celebration than, if they work it up the chain. But I also thought that RMI did an incredible job of organizing it, and the whole idea of using the little Post-it notes to submit your commitments, voluntary commitments from each group, and then that's what ended up being in this commitment document, which ended up being, I think, if we do some of these things, this is a really great forward-looking step, both on the low income and on the residential energy efficiency in general. On the low income in the near term, I thought what was most promising was there's a couple of things. One, the receptiveness of the Neighborhood Energy Savers manager, and the commitment, what I heard, a commitment to do 2 Neighborhood Energy Savers projects in Buncombe next year. Which
Just tell people what neighborhood.
What Neighborhood Energy Savers is, they come in and just like versus our Energy Savers Network, which is pretty slow and volunteer based. They come in as a SWAT team basically and take on a neighborhood and surge in that neighborhood and get a lot. And they target lower incomes, neighborhoods that have lower income, but they are not low income. Once you identify a neighborhood that's low income, they don't check to see if the individual recipient of the services is low income. They just go in and do it. So the commitment to come back to Asheville and do that, and they might do 800 homes or 1,000 homes, or 600 homes at a turn, is a really good commitment. They do a lot of good things with that, and I also was interested in the receptiveness that they had to working with the community and maybe seeing how the community could partner. And obviously that involves a third-party contractor and might be a challenge to do that, but there was an openness to do that. But that was number one.
And you said they're going to do.
Well,
two.
I heard 2. I think this document says 1. So one would be great.
At least one.
Right. I heard a commitment to make sure that we bring that back to Asheville.
Right. So maybe I was just wishful
thinking for 1 for sure.
That's right.
And I don't know about the second one, but we'll find out.
Right, and what I was stressing was, let's see if we can help that process, but then leverage that process with what we're doing within the community when they're not here, when the SWAT team doesn't come in. And there was an openness to that whole idea that I think the manager, we do these custom storm windows for people, and the manager, Tim, I think Tim may have mentioned gee, well, why don't we, that's definitely something we don't do with neighborhood energy savers, but maybe, we could tee that up and let you come back into the houses that we identify in neighborhood energy savers for some form of follow-up work to get people some kind of double paying type thing of some sort going on. So that was a really good thing. I think the other more long-term item that I heard that was really promising, we were saying how can Duke fund a long-term ongoing community-based program to upgrade lower-income homes? What's the mechanism? And I think Tim Duff identified a program in Ohio, I think, in Europe, and maybe in Ohio, it's called performance-based contracting, where you basically develop a standard for if somebody installs a measure, then there's an engineering estimate of the benefits of that measure, and a payment is made from Duke to the vendor that does that. So that could be a vehicle for our community-based program to get something. I might not cover all of it, but it would be a start to get those measures installed. And that would be a next summer. That would actually require regulatory approval, but they were willing to pilot Asheville as a way to get regulatory approval for that. And so I thought that was really, really, really promising.
Well, and to put that into perspective, Tim is actually the person who would have to convince the regulators to do it. So for him to say, I think this is a good idea, is significant.
Right. And so that was really as a result of my presentation, Energy Savers Network and Community Action. I mean, Vicki, and she's not here today. She had something she told me about, but she couldn't come in. But she sends her regards. Just in the presentation and the acquaintance of the Duke people with what's going on in the community already and what some of our energy is about and what we're concerned about, that it sparked some of these ideas to come out of how we could possibly proceed on some of these things. I also, and this is just in looking at this list, which I know everybody doesn't have, just the coordination, the whole idea in the residential. Are you going to talk about the residential? Sure. Why don't you talk about just the whole idea of one-stop shopping, which is something we've been pushing sort of within the residential programs group of an energy coach program or a one-stop shop, or for residential issues, you have, the campaign has a number you call, and based on the conversation, the information goes to the Duke programs, or it goes to Community Action, or there's somebody that can help, that we can send people to, who would call and think about, well, what can we do in our home? The whole idea of having that more of a coordinated front that's more holistic. I think it's in this list of things that people have committed to start to take a look at, so I feel good about that. Yeah, you want to just, because you were in just the general residential, and that's the other part of it, not just the low income, but residential in general.
We had 3 breakout groups, commercial, residential, and low income. So I was in the residential piece the whole time. I felt like it was a great meeting as well. I felt like the right people from Duke were present, and I believe that Robert and Jason also kind of framed the meeting very well, and RMI did a fantastic job facilitating and enough time. It was cool being in the residential group and hearing, Mike Marshall from the marketing side talking with Rick on the kind of program implementation side. These guys, I don't know how often they talk, but they can I can just see them drawing connections with each other. And one of the things is the way that Duke runs their programs now, on the residential side, whether it's Energy Wise Home, Smart Saver, and Home Energy Household, is all 3 programs implemented by separate contractors that are siloed. And so it's difficult. There's not a lot of collaboration across those programs. And so one of the major things we talked about is this portal, this customer portal that could be like a e-score or something else that would help the customer really understand what the possibility is, and then contractors would be able to see what's available to that customer as well. So we talked about, as AMI rolls out in 2018, Duke's getting a new billing system. There's also an opportunity for a new customer portal across all the territory to offer to customers to be able to manage their process more effectively and have them understand what opportunities are, versus like just getting a brochure here and there about the different programs. So that was one of the key takeaways. Another one was engaging the contractors more, having them be agents to sell the program, especially if there's the Smart Saver. Currently right now, if you log on the website to get insulation, upgraded or whatever, you go to try to find a qualified contractor. Those people have been vetted by Duke, and they pay a finder's fee if they end up doing a job. Sometimes that the website's not so great at pointing people. Sometimes there's not enough contractors available or whatever. We're trying to get more contractors engaged in that process. So they're actually promoting the program, as in they actually sell the upgrades too. So if you want to get your HVAC installed or upgraded, you're actually hearing from a contractor who says, yeah, well, we think you should get a cold climate heat pump over here in West North Carolina, and hey, by the way, you can get this rebate, and they actually become agents for that versus just trying to sell the cheapest system available. Those are two, and then also one of the core things we talked about is just the marketing implementation. When that rolls out, how does that collaborate and coordinate with the programs? So that way, if we do this big, huge marketing push, and people start calling, the programs are ready. Because Mike Marshall said, he's a marketing guy, he said in Florida they did that. They had this beautiful campaign. It was so sexy, people start calling, and the programs people weren't ready. And then it's flopped, So it was like, oh, well, we'll get to you in a year. So making sure that the marketing and the program implementation side are very well aligned so that the resources are available to say yes once people call. So there's a lot of things, we have this list that we definitely go around. There's a lot of great commitments on here. We also talked about collecting next steps. I guess one of the key things I see about on all of this is like, on the Duke side, on the Hugh Robert or Jason or who on Duke's going to kind of like make sure these people stay motivated on tackling these things.
Yeah, that's on me.
Yeah, cool. That's great. I'm glad to hear that.
So we've got about 10 minutes left for this discussion, so I just wanted to try to, someone who unfortunately couldn't be at the meeting, just want to wrap up what I think I'm hearing and maybe summarize. So what I've heard is that there's kind of 3 initial steps that can be part of the campaign that we're rolling out this fall. One is pushing, on the residential side, pushing everybody to energy-wise home. And we haven't, I don't know that there's been any conversation around how that's going to happen, but that, like what's the role of the people and organizations in this room in doing that? That'll be part of the, Shelton will help us figure that out. So that's kind of the big residential piece for the winter, take advantage of this winter and the peak season.
And something that most everyone in our county can do. So it's an easy thing that most everyone.
It's an easy on-ramp, right? Okay. And then on the commercial side, we've got the small business focus, so that can be the focus for the small business, or for business and commercial. And then the low income, we can say neighborhood energy savers is going to be coming back next year. Hopefully, we'll also have good news on the city and county program on low income soon. So is that kind of those are sort of the 3 things that would get pushed out, you can say would be rolled out in the short term, and then there's still work to do on the longer term. Is that correct?
Right.
Brad?
I would agree with that, but I would just, and maybe this is obvious, maybe I'm saying the obvious, but a general call to action. Just general call to action on people to do what they can with what they know now, more to come later.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's right, exactly. And I think there's actually more that we can push people to energy savers. We can push people to cool communities. We can push people to, there's other stuff that's out there that's existing, but these were sort of the Duke-related things that we could say are coming.
I would definitely agree with the 3 in your assessment there, and I support it totally. But I would also stress again, the rollout should be in a context of engaging the community, asking these questions, explaining it, and just literally say, how can we do this better? What are these other issues? As opposed to, here's energy-wise, once again, we've been at this for 1.5 years, and I really think this is a great opportunity with these tools to come out with low income, to small income, but also having a 2-way communication with the public specifically to talk about it and push it. So can use that information to fine tune things for 2018.
Come on, you, and then Jane.
One comment real quick. So far, the three things we talked about, like you mentioned, seems to me to focus on existing, what we have, we need to improve. But is there any discussion we need to have about, with the pipeline coming in, and we have so much construction going on, apartments, condos, hotels, retail, and when I'm doing the project, I'm trying to make it as efficient as possible, but when new things are coming on, how can that be addressed?
That's good.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'll comment on it briefly. We did have all day, but there's so many things to talk about. Like, that's one thing that just frankly there wasn't really the bandwidth to kind of spend much time on in terms of new construction. But it is a topic that I know the county's interested in. We've, as a result of some of the discussions here, we've spoken with our permitting department about what can we do to really, we've got a really strong green building community here, of course, but not every developer kind of already is thinking about it. So there's good conversations underway around how we can educate people at those key points where they're going to definitely invest money. How do we make sure that they go to the greenest opportunities possible? Lee's given some great input on some of that from a builder standpoint. So the county's definitely interested in kind of defining that further. So I don't know that that's like ready to go right now as one of our top priority things, but I would say in the coming months, we definitely want to build in, a strong program around enhancing that. This is another area where Duke actually has very good incentives, but not everybody knows about them. We think if we layer in some additional county incentives and educate people in the right way, a lot more builders are going to take advantage of them.
I was just,
Yeah, and the technology committee actually started taking a deep dive on our programs targeted at residential new construction and also retrofits. Because we know, HVAC is a key contributor to the issue. So I see us kind of dovetailing that into this broader program work as well.
So I think probably what we need to do is just, we've got these other near-term things we want to act on, but I think on the county side, and we of course like to work with the city on this too, is just, kind of schedule a time frame to kind of focus on exploring what we really need to be doing on that, so we can, because we've been talking about it for a while, and we think there's good opportunities, but we need to kind of come up with a time frame for coming up with specific recommendations, and I think we would like to get the EITF's, endorsement of them before they go to city or county commission or whatever the appropriate decision-making point is with staff to make any changes or further promote them.
Yeah, and I'm sure Jay's mind is going here, but my mind is going here that if we're focusing on low-income communities and we're focusing on needing more contractors, I'd like to see the EITF as a recommendation say we need to hook up with green opportunities and get this into the pipeline of their contract training. That I don't want to speak for you, Jay, but it's just that my brain as a board member is going, wow! That they get certified and get on the Duke list for this area, especially with the new youth bill programs. I'm getting excited.
So we do need to wrap up this portion and move on, but to Himanshu's point, this is a momentous moment where this is kind of what we've been waiting for and working toward for 16 months, however long we've been doing this. So we should, I don't know, pat ourselves on the back, clap, I don't know, something, like just acknowledge this moment.
It just, I guess, maybe I should really answer this, but just as a question to make sure we're clear on this. So, this was just a week ago, a hurricane, came about in between that meeting and this meeting. So, we want to report out today, but we do need to kind of also kind of put what we're talking about today kind of into a document that everyone can see. So, who is taking the lead on that? Is Virginia is our mind going to do so? Like, at our next meeting, we'll actually have like a document that kind of shows what we're talking about today. Here's the specific recommendations for action and the commitments. So we'll have that at our next meeting.
Right. And once we have that, we'll, right? Each one of us who has our names on that list of actions.
Yeah, okay, so stay tuned for that.
So that then does take us into the campaign.
Before we go into that, what Jane referenced, I was trying to hear what we were saying. The document that would come out would be the actual what has been decided up till now. Am I correct? And
Well, it's the commitments that people have made.
the commitments that people have made.
Is that, I just want to make sure we
Well,
characterize
not
it
just the
accurately.
commitments, but the essence of the discussion.
Yeah,
Is that-
okay.
Okay, and so, just so I'm clear, when we talk about implementation, at what point would it be appropriate for us to recommend or suggest that there be a workforce development component of it, where Green Opportunities or other agencies like it could say, this is what we would like to do, and then the EITF could make its commitment to that? At what point is that appropriate?
So
That's
it gets
really
into
good
the
question.
recommendation.
I think so. I mean, so I think that at the next meeting, we'll have a document that kind of outlines the specific commitments that different individual groups and partners have made, and then also these recommendations for kind of short-term action to kind of get this campaign going. And if there's agreement on the EITF that yes, we're all excited about taking action on these different planks right now, then I think kind of these important pieces of like, all right, well, how do you best implement it? I think we'll get timely to start taking up those kind of ideas.
Yeah, because without that, my fear, without that, or my concern, without that, it just kind of glazes over, and it's not documented, not codified, not able to be referred to, not able to be enforced. So I want to make sure that I'm not being anxious, but I do want to make sure that it's there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and there's still, I mean, this document is not the be-all and end-all. There's still implementation plans that will need to be developed under a lot
Right,
of these.
and I think it's good to show intention.
Yeah.
This is the direction, this is what
Yeah.
we're hoping for. Nothing's perfect, but this is what we hope.
Right. No, I think the timing is good.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Penny. Yeah.
Thank you. Penny Count with Shelton Group, you guys have seen me present, most of you. Previously, we have been part of this initiative to help brand or name what it is you're doing and come up with the marketing and branding around how to get the community engaged and involved across the board. So the last time I was here, I presented 3 names or concepts, if you will, for how to brand this initiative. And we were going into the market and getting some feedback, both in some qualitative or like focus group type, but not in a traditional focus group setting. We actually went out into the community and met some people, and then also via online survey. So I'm going to share with you the results from that work. And as always, we like to start with a little just really quick context setting so we're all on the same page, because not everyone has been with us every step along the way. So again, just to reinforce, the communications objective is to generate awareness and engagement in this community-wide initiative to create and embrace clean energy as the way forward. And then our target audience is a broad spectrum of residents ranging in age and income, with a heavy focus on those that are heavy users, as well as a broad spectrum of business community with a heavy emphasis on small and mid-size. And that doesn't mean that large C&I won't be part of this. It's just there's more direct contact between Duke and others with those large players. So the desired takeaway, and this is from the communications that we are putting together, the desired takeaway is for when people interact with this campaign or any of the communications surrounding it, that they walk away saying, I can make a difference, and they feel empowered, that they can do something about making a difference for themselves, for their family, and for the community that they love. And then the bullet points there are just all the reasons to believe that, because it's been a community-wide led initiative. The recommendations have been vetted. We've pulled in a lot of experts, we've pulled in a lot of feedback, et cetera. So this is, again, just context setting to set up what it is that we put together as potential names or concepts around this initiative and how you would promote it in the market. So these are the three concepts that I'll just take you through again as a reminder. This is what people saw when we talked with them, either one-on-one or when we put information in front of them for the survey. And while I'm showing them to you in a clear order, they were exposed to them in randomized order. So even our one-on-ones, we randomized the order that we showed it. Likewise, on the online survey, it was randomized, so we control for bias. When the whole community gets behind clean energy, blue skies are more than just wishful thinking. The Blue Horizons Project, clear energy for a clean future. And then this was the sentiment, if you will, behind that concept, the language, or the positioning, if you will, what led to that name. Again, this is not verbatim copy that you would see on this website or on the materials one day. It was more so how to describe how we came to this name and get people's reaction to the sentiment. Concept 2. A clean energy future isn't something that happens, it's something we make. Power here, advancing clean energy. And then again, sentiment behind this name, what inspired this direction. And then concept 3, when it comes to a clean energy future, there's no place like home, community powered, clean energy, bright future. And again, the sentiment behind that. All right, so just want to give you a few minutes to kind of refamiliarize yourself with it. These are the 3 options, and I will take you through the feedback. So again, we met with some folks, thank you Jay, at the Eddington Center. We also, thanks to Corey, met with some folks at the Chamber of Commerce, and then we conducted an online survey. We had 171 total respondents. Our goal was 100 to have a substantial pool to draw from and feel good about the quantitative results. So we got 171, which was great. And again, we exposed them to all 3 concepts, got their feedback in a randomized order, and then at the end of them seeing all 3 concepts, we said, okay, now which one of these would you rank in order? So just to give you a little bit of context for who we talked to and make sure that the folks that conducted the online survey were representative of the community. We had a very good mix of age, income, and education. So you want to kind of see a bell curve, if you will, and make sure you're getting a good spread out cross section of the community. So we felt good about that as well. All right, so the Blue Horizons Project. I know this may surprise many of you, but it scored the highest on both appeal and interest in terms of learning more. So when we asked how appealing is XYZ initiative or movement, again with the concepts presented in random order, you see there 75%, and the way you do this, you look at the top 2 boxes in terms of appealing, most appealing. 75% found it the most appealing versus power here and community powered. Also, a very important question is, how interested would you be in learning more about this initiative as a result of seeing this communication? And again, it scored on top with 68%. Now you'll see some neutrals and you'll see some uninterested or disliked. That's to be expected. There are some people you're never going to get, and there are some people that are just a little more negative in surveys or have a little more bias regardless, but I'm not going to please everyone. So this gives you an indication of the response. When we went back and then said, okay, now you've seen all 3 concepts, rank order them, the Blue Horizons Project came out first as well. And when we went back and then reread our notes and the things that we collected, we had some worksheets in the groups that we conducted. It was also very much preferred as well. Now it wasn't as clear in the qualitative, because it never is, because you have a smaller number of people, but it synced up the feedback that we heard. And in fact, we got some verbatims from the online survey that synced up with the verbatims that we heard in the groups. So I thought it might be interesting for you to hear what some people had to say about this specific concept. So one comment, and this will ring true with many in the room, seems more hard-headed and gives, if not specifics, the impression that they exist. It's the most personal sounding, uses clear language for what the project is about, gives enough to pique interest and spur further inquiry. I like the idea of bringing together many communities, sounds unifying. I like the emphasis on community and working to keep our local environment clean. It makes it less abstract and easier to care about when it's the place you personally live. I like the idea of using blue to associate the ideas of clean energy to a better environment instead of the overused green. So it was very positively, that guy giggles. It was very positively received. Now, that's not to say that we didn't get learning from this on how we can adjust the messaging and some of the words or phrases that connected the most and some things that, you know, maybe kind of hit them a little flat. We're going to go back and revisit the tagline for this one. There was some feedback that what exactly does clean future mean? So we're going to reconsider that and also take a look at potentially advancing clean energy was one that a lot of the groups liked. So there's nothing that says we can't use a tagline from one of the other names. There was also full of opportunity, felt a little fluff and a little meh. And so, again, even though those paragraphs are not something that we would verbatim pick up and you would ever see in any materials, it's good to know what words or phrases, you know, create a disconnect or a little ickiness. So that is something that will be noted. Really like less energy wasted, more money saved. Want to hear more about that, build on that. And I thought this was a great suggestion. Also incorporate more about making clean energy more accessible and affordable. I thought that was great feedback as well. Dominique? Yes.
So my takeaway from this, I got a little confused because not much of what we've been talking about here in the programs that we're rolling out and trying to promote have anything to do with clean energy. They're energy efficiency. Mm-hmm. And so to me it was a little, it definitely felt, I had cognitive dissonance when I read these things, and it, you know, the one here, less energy wasted, more energy saved, that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
We're not talking about clean energy future. I mean, it may be a component of it, but really these initial programs are all about saving energy. So it just seemed, it almost seemed like a marketing ploy to create the impression that we're doing clean energy, but we're actually not right now. So it just, there was a cognitive dissonance more.
So I have feedback for that in two different ways. So one, how people define clean energy. While most people immediately go to renewables and energy source, we have done other research that, to my surprise actually, more people than not are willing or accept that the energy you don't use, it's kind of like the idea of what's the most efficient car or the most sustainable car, the one in your driveway, instead of buying new. And so there is a general philosophical acceptance that clean energy also means not wasting energy, and the less energy that we use that is wasted via inefficient homes or inefficient buildings or what have you, moves us towards a cleaner future. And I believe there's also a commitment by this community to add more storage, more renewables. So it's all about a journey towards clean energy, and you can't do it all, you can't flip a switch and go all renewables. So that's what I'll tell you from a customer perception. Sometimes it's difficult because we know, I mean, particularly someone like you that knows so much about the space, that from a sentiment standpoint, it represents a much broader meaning, if you will. And then the other thing is, my understanding is that we do have programs, or you will have programs, or there's more stuff coming, and that this is a long-term vision.
And that may be true, but I also like the truth. Like, so for me, I think it's important to be truthful over trying to have spin or trying to play the margins of truth to promote something. I just think that's really important. So for me, I'm just telling you from my own personal, I love what we're doing here. I think it's great.
Right.
But the marketing piece of this seemed to be somewhat misleading to me.
Because it's too much emphasis on what you felt was renewables with the emphasis on clean.
The clean energy, because it's, you know, we know this is the majority, the energy we're consuming is not clean energy.
And so that's also something that we can address in the tagline. And then, like I said, the sentiment, these paragraphs that were used are not at all meant to be what you're gonna see on a brochure or what you'd see on a web page or what have you. It was totally meant to be what is the inspiration or aspiration, if you will, behind this movement.
Why don't we get some other feedback? I've seen Ned, Jane, and Brad.
Well, very briefly, I see Dave's point, and within an area, I agree with him. However, I disagree, respectfully, sir, in that it is all clean energy in varying stages. We are looking at a 5-year, whatever, long-term program, which is rolling more things out. And there are these connections between energy efficiency, clean energy reduction. You know, we can go on for a while. We're not going to replace every megawatt with solar, blah, blah, blah. So, yes, it's not exactly there. But on the other hand, I think it leads us in the right direction because it gives the opportunity to say, well, we've got to tighten up first, and then we're going to expand with solar and storage and so on and so forth. So, I don't think your objection really will hold water if we look at this 2 years out. Does that make sense?
Jane?
Yeah, what I was thinking is, if I understand you correctly, we could have Blue Horizons and then less energy wasted, more money saved, or something as the tagline, something like that, instead of clean energy for a clean future.
Yeah, we're going to come back with a recommendation on the tagline based on the feedback that we heard, but it was very clear, the research results were not fuzzy. You know, sometimes we will do research and there's not a clear winner, and in this case, there was a clear winner.
But I mean, the tagline could stress.
Yes, the tagline could
more
address
energy
some of what
Yeah.
you're suggesting, and it's certainly not our intent to mislead. That's not our MO as a company.
Brad and then Kanachi.
I don't think you're misleading at all, and I respectfully disagree with Dave. And there's no energy that's used that's clean, that actually the only energy that's really clean is the energy that's not used, because there's some no energy that's not totally clean. But I would also add that the measures, I would also add, let me make my point. There's also the measures that we're talking about allow the demand response measures, the energy safe, the energy wise measures that we're talking about, and also the peak reduction measures that we do with our focus on the winter, allows the Duke system to rely less on peaking resources, which means Duke can run their system more efficiently and cleaner. So it's cleaner energy. It's not clean, but I don't know if any energy is clean.
All right.
Just real off Dave's thing, the comment about the energy saved, money saved, or something like that. I don't know. I just want to I think when we first heard from you guys, it was specifically said, it is not about saving money, or you're not going to save money, or something like that. I don't know, I can't remember. But your research shows that making all these changes it doesn't significantly reduce. So I want to be careful on that too, that we're not putting out there that it's saving money as a marketing ploy, and then people actually don't see savings.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, we have research, others have research,
Right.
that one of the challenges with energy efficiency and promoting energy efficiency programs and activities and behavior change is that consumers feel like, okay, I did that stuff and my bill barely went down, or didn't, and there's some other reasons that that hadn't happened, but nonetheless, they feel disillusioned, or perhaps feel like they've been misled. And so we absolutely think it is a mistake to hang all of your marketing and communications efforts on saving money.
Okay.
And I think the interesting thing about this community in particular is that you guys are so engaged up, down, and sideways in terms of an environmental and a bigger message and about your community and the environmental aspect, that there are other triggers you can pull with some people here.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add another voice, because I think we probably had this conversation last time. I don't remember if you were here, Dave. But yeah, also don't agree with that assessment of the clean energy term, which I see very widely used as being applicable to energy efficiency and renewable energy, and I think that is the right way to go. I also wanted to say that I don't think we should rebrand the campaign and say that it's an energy efficiency campaign, because I think we need to hold ourselves accountable so that there is a renewable energy strong component of this, and that we don't just kind of sell ourselves out by saying, oh, well, all we did was energy efficiency, let's just call it that. I mean, I think one response to what Dave's comment is, well, what should we be doing more? What are we not doing right now that needs to be part of this campaign on the renewable side? And are we kind of shirking our efforts on that side? So let that be kind of a call to us to make sure it is a clean energy campaign in all of those senses.
Bingo.
Here. Right. Jay?
I may have missed something, but I did think that the energy efficiency would translate into lower bills, a lower energy bill, and especially with the community that I'm in contact with the most. If we're going to market and advertise anything, I fear that we will not get buy-in for something that does not show up in a dollar amount per month or a dollar amount per year or something like that, to which people can aspire. Because I mean, in general, just with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you have a base level need, you're not going to be concerned about saving the world or changing, the general climate of what goes on in the mountains if you have to pay a large bill. I did think that energy efficiency would translate into some kind of savings, and I think that if that is true, then it should be advertised, and if it's not true, then I am grossly mistaken.
Yeah, and Jay, this might help, but when I was describing not hanging the reason to engage in energy efficiency, just don't hang it all on savings, because it's kind of like the 80% versus the 60%. If they just heard 60%, they'd be really happy, but they heard 80 and then they only got 60 and they were like, you took something from me. Not really. So it's that kind of psyche.
All right, thank you.
I think that's a very good point, but I think we do need to be wary in this that people won't always be able to see the savings that they are experiencing. If somebody changes out one light bulb, you might not see that in your bill because from month to, but we know it's saving energy, but from month to month, the bills are so random with all the weather and everything, and so they're not, and so conditioning people to say that you might not see it, I don't know where you do that, but I do know that it's an issue when we go in and it's hard to see the benefits that next month.
Right, that's right.
So we probably need to wrap this discussion up and actually take a vote. Are people ready to do that?
I just have one quick question. So I just did Google it. So there's like a contractor in the area called Blue Horizon. There's Blue Horizon. This is U.S. Air Force thing. We're not going to get into any sort of like naming trademark sort of deal.
I just bought the URL.
Cha-ching. So that is something that we talked about early on in this process of like, because this
How much
is a
does it cost?
community initiative, I don't know that there's an owner or a need to trademark or not trademark. I mean, we'll certainly make sure that we're not doing anything to get you in trouble, but it's not like an entity that a company is owning this thing and putting a trademark on it.
And I don't want to create confusion related to like this versus other, contractor or the airport or whatever.
It's the contractor here.
There's a contractor here in Asheville called Blue Horizon.
They would love it.
Yeah, they would like it.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it if it's not directly in the category. there's hardly anything
So we
out
don't,
there that's.
we haven't really done a lot of votes here. We don't really have a good process for that, but maybe we just, somebody can sort of make an official motion. And I'll just say, thank you, Penny and the rest of your team for running this and doing the community outreach that we wanted done and that we, you know, this, I will be honest, this was not, the Blue Horizons was not my first choice, but given the vetting and that's where the community has come out with, I feel like that's my obligation as the city representative here is to support that outcome.
Before we do, I think there was at least one other comment, and we don't vote that often, so if we are going to, I definitely want to hear everybody's, you know, kind of, we're starting to run tight on time, so just any last comments or observations folks want to share?
Well, I mean, I think the key here is energy efficiency. One way or another, somehow that concept has got to be in the tagline in the body, because as I read through the body and all, it was just not there at all. And that really is the core. So it's just like, and you heard it in the discussion, you heard it in your answer. That's like a core element. Somehow that's got to get built in.
Anybody else in the public?
Just a quick observation. I wonder if the results have something to do with the fact that it has the and project in the name, and that the other names, if there's any reservation with Blue Horizons, I wonder if the other names might have sort of voted up more if they had that like tangibility in them.
I will tell you from some of the qualitative where we heard live from people firsthand and from the verbatims, there were other aspects of Power Here and community power that people didn't like. That didn't have anything to do with, because we had that same conversation, quite frankly, internally within our organization before even testing them, and their objections to it were not, it didn't have to do with that. Now, it could very much have impacted them saying this feels more like this is a thing. Does that make sense? But there were other aspects of Power Here and community power that they didn't like, that putting a noun on the end, I don't think would fix.
So I have a question. So is your recommendation that we move ahead with Blue Horizons project?
Yes, our recommendation.
And again, this is obviously an iterative process, and there's going to be, further input on how it's all, that emphasizing that, it's not just energy efficiency, but there is huge opportunities with energy efficiency, and that's going to be a core part of it. So that's your recommendation.
Yes, our recommendation is that we move forward with Blue Horizons project, and we come back within these assets that are listed, which is under our current agreement with you all, that we come back with a marketing plan that includes key messaging. And so the way that we typically approach this, and the way I would recommend it for this group as well, is that we identify key messaging at a high level in terms of how you describe this by target audience, and then we also drill down key messages for specific programs and who you're targeting with those programs, so like a small medium business or low income or residential at large, and it will include a component of both behavioral as well as programmatic things that we can recommend. And you would have that messaging grid that you could use across a variety of different tactics, et cetera. And then we will come back with some additional graphics, website strategy, et cetera.
And then also I think you're going to kind of develop a little bit of a rollout plan.
Yes, so the marketing plan would also include strategies and tactics for how you can roll this out initially, and then what some long-term considerations are as well.
Real quick, Dave.
Yeah, real quick. So could I suggest that we take a vote on the name, the Blue Horizons Project, but not the tagline and the other stuff underneath?
Yeah, we're saying that the tagline and we've got learning that we want to apply and come back to you as part of the creative assets. We just need to know the Blue Horizons Project is where we're going. And so with the input that we have received both from you here as well as the input we received in the research, we'll come back with a recommended tagline as well as messaging that is intended to be public facing to describe this program and also to engage people.
Is that a motion, Dave?
That's a motion.
All right.
My first motion.
Second.
All right.
Any other discussion? Greg? all in favor of Blue Horizon project and moving forward?
Raise your hand.
Aye. Great. Any opposed?
Wait,
I don't get that.
Yeah. So I don't think anybody was opposed. Great, thank you
All right.
so much. So guys, again, momentous moment.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's redundant, but I'm saying it again. So we have a campaign, we have things we're gonna do, we're gonna put it all together, and it'll be all together, moving forward. So thank you. Yeah.
Great.
So that takes us into like the next little piece, which is, well, then what happens next? And the answer is, beyond kind of what we've talked about today, we don't have a clear picture of that. We were the kind of what I call the extended leadership group, so the three convening organizations and the chairs of the different working groups. We were supposed to meet last Friday. That didn't happen for a variety of reasons, and so we're going to be pulling that meeting together in the next couple of weeks to talk about, what is the structure of this campaign, what are the roles and responsibilities going to be of the three partners, of other community organizations around the table, of the ITF members. So that is a conversation that hasn't happened yet, but work, obviously the work continues to progress while we figure that out. As I've said a dozen times, we continue to build this plane while we're flying it, which is maybe not advisable, but it is what we're doing. Yeah, well, I like it.
It's always alarming whenever I hear that.
Pretty soon it'll be a plane.
It also gets us to back to the original analogy of, sometimes the closest exit is behind you, and that's kind of what we're doing by focusing on these existing programs and pushing them. So, okay, so anything else on? Okay. Public comment then, I think, is where we are. Jerry?
2 points. I think the name you just voted on sounds good. I want to give you an analogy real quick so you can understand it. Value Health in our community rebranded their name, it was Smoky Mountain. It costed over $1.3 million, $300,000. It sounded good, but it didn't do nothing for the consumer except take services from them. So when you're looking at this, I agree with this fellow here that we need to be looking at the customer. The customer is the one that we really need to be making a point to. It's not the big companies and the profiteers. It's the individuals like us sitting around this table. The biggest payers is the individuals. The taxpayer, just like they do the county commissioners, They're on to them about their bills. They get tax bills every year. We need to be thinking about the individual, not the big ones that can pay the bill. The next thing is for Duke. Down at Hot Springs, I'm well aware of that community. That's where our roots are. Why can they not go to hydro? And that way it'd be a more consistent power source rather than solar. Even though I like solar, you don't get about 53% in these mountains. So why not look at that? That'd be a more sustainable revenue for everybody.
Interestingly, to that point, the substation that serves Hot Springs is located at what we call our Marshall Hydro Plant. 10 kW. It's small hydro plant. So some of the power that gets to Hot Springs does come from hydro.
Yeah, but I'm talking about something more closer to rather than miles away. Because you're still talking about if something happened in Marshall, they still wouldn't have it in Hot Springs. So I'm talking about more immediate in the town. It ain't that big of a town, so.
All right. Thanks, Jerry.
So I just wanted to inject, in reflecting on the discussion that happened about what the phrase was said, that lighting changes makes the most sense, it has the most rapid payback. And yet there's a unifying thing that I think is really kind of missing from the discussion here, and maybe needs to be part of the marketing plan too. And we started this thing, Net Zero Foundation, back a couple years ago when we had seen that some of the schools were being built and they were net zero energy. And that in fact, they also cost barely more than a conventional school would have cost. This is new schools. And then within 2 years, they'd already paid for themselves and were making money. Like literally making a lot of money, these schools. And so now, flash forward a couple of years, we saw this 3 years ago or whatever. Flash forward just now, the DOE just released an NREL report that confirmed that net zero energy schools can be built in every climate section of the country. So these are schools, it costs a little more, and then they not just break even, they make money forever. So this idea that we're talking about something here that is an economically not just viable, but very positive from building wealth locally. It's a fundamental thing. Nobody really wants to say it this way, but we are right now paying the fossil fuel industry a fortune constantly, every one of us, constantly. And that's happening. So all of that money, what we're talking about here, is saying all of that money can stay here. That drain, if we invest in that drain, and so what's going on, at least in our field and everything, is this idea of effectively free. Because in reality, these things that break even and then make money, these things are in fact free. If you just get your head around it, you just go, well, what's the time frame of free? You have to just put your financing together, and so it costs you a little more up front, but then as of a certain point, it breaks even and then it makes money. That is, by definition, free. You're not spending, it's not cost, it's investment. So this whole idea of just shifting the focus around to go, this is a wealth building thing, this is a local pulling the money back, this is stopping this drain and bleed that's occurred for 200 years in our society that we've just gotten used to completely, like the frog in the hot plate. And this idea of the wealth and the break, get out of this short-term break even and all like that, effectively free is like a core kind of unifying thing that we might be able to build in something.
Julie, quick comment. Okay, with hydropower, we have to be very thoughtful about the possible negative environmental consequences. So, and that's a very big topic for another time, but please just make a mental note of that. Thanks.
I just wanted to call attention to a webinar that is kind of a dive into the weeds for anybody who's interested in peak planning with distributed energy resources. It's on advanced energy economy, which is a trade association, but it's called Getting Out in Front. It's distributed planning for a modern grid. I have sent a link to Lauren, so hopefully we'll show that. Awesome, thank you.
Yes, I'm from White Star Solar, and we're a very different sort of solar company. It's a concentrator technology that directly heats water. And last time I was here, I suggested that this group, because of the heavy support from Duke and the energy derived from electricity focus, we really ought to call it the Electricity Innovation Task Force. But my point is to point out that there's a lot of other usage and carbon emissions coming from propane, natural gas, fuel oil. That's where the solar concentrator, which is based in Asheville, can make a direct impact that avoids the peaker issue of converting people to the heat pump, electrical heat pump situation, which isn't really working that well with super cold at the peak time of year. I'm a terrible salesperson, obviously, and I've not done a good job of helping people understand that this complements the work that we've been doing here with electricity in a very significant way. And there are some great opportunities with hotel motels, where we have 3 big projects up in town now, and they're doing great. Public housing projects where you have a hot water heater for showers, and you can do space heating with hot water, obviously. The breweries, why isn't there more going on? I blame myself for not getting that message out. But yeah, there's a tremendous advantage if you compare PV versus the solar concentrator. We've done some analytical work that shows, based on recent projects in our area, that the collectors themselves cost about the same, with the concentrators we're selling, you can use half the space, which is kind of nice. You can get double the energy capture out of the same roof, for example. Your storage cost for the energy, compared to lithium ion or exotic batteries, hot water storage tank is about 1/5 the cost of actually storing that energy for use when you need it. And yeah, we avoid a lot of the North Carolina restrictions on how you can finance these things. We can do third-party financing with the solar concentrators. And there are limits on the usage of it as there are with electricity. So consider White Star when you're planning your energy usage, and I'm your terrible representative of that good technology. Very available to discuss it in detail.
Yes, ma'am.
I haven't heard anyone address this, and it may be because I can't hear everything in these meetings, but the whole thing of Duke increasing everyone's bill 13 to 15% as of January 1st, that is a real concern to me, and I appreciate what you brought up from Green Opportunities. If people's bills just are going to be more as of January, then how do you explain what we've been doing here to people? I feel like when I saw that, all of a sudden I went, what in the world is that? How does that reflect back on us? How is the public going to understand energy savings when their bill is going to go up 13 to 15%? Just bam. So then what do we do? I mean, how is that going to be? I mean, has anyone thought about that?
Yeah.
Besides me?
Big question that is beyond our capacity within this group to make a decision on. So contact the Utility Commission and share your
You can
thoughts
testify
about
next
that.
week.
Right.
At a public hearing.
There's a public
2
hearing.
weeks.
Yeah. All
2
right.
weeks, yeah.
Any other?
Did you hear it's public hearing in 2 weeks? I don't think so.
Public hearing in 2 weeks.
Oh, no, I know what the public
It's a
hearing is.
Utility Commission decision, and it involves a lot of things not related to what we're doing. Anybody else on, Dave, you can get the last word. Anybody else from the public? Finally, you never express yourself, Dave. What's on your mind?
No, I just wanted to follow up on what Rick said. We do have this initiative to create a net zero energy school here in Asheville, and I want to give a tribute to Sam and the Appalachian Offsets. And we need to get the word out. We need to get this, we really want to fund this project and really support the work that Sam has put in on Appalachian Offsets. So we have something tangible we can do right now, and it really will bring huge benefits to our community. So it's a positive thing.
We have to raise $220,000. We have a matching grant right now of $110,000. So any donation gets doubled. We've raised $120,000.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance and participation. We're adjourned.
Great. Thanks, everyone.